I do want to share with you some additional resources that I think would be very useful, not just for these units and lessons, but for anything you might be doing in your music technology classes. First of all, I think it's really important that you check out some of the streaming services that are available that offer lossless quality audio, not compressed MP3 audio. So the audio that you get on standard, say, Spotify, comes as compressed audio. If you have a decent set of studio monitors that you have in your music technology lab, which I hope that you would for playing examples for students, you're really going to hear a difference if you are utilizing lossless audio streaming. When students create something in Logic or in GarageBand and they export it, they'll often notice that the exported version sounds different than even what they just had in GarageBand or say Logic. Well, the reason why it is different because when that audio is exported as an MP3, it is going to compress that audio, which means it's actually going to eliminate some of the frequencies and sounds that the algorithm determines aren't perceptible by human ears. But the fact is, it is perceptible. So, you may choose to export something as an uncompressed file, which would, for example, WAV files are uncompressed audio. But when you listen to most of the things that you're going to hear on Apple Music and Spotify, that is going to be compressed audio. So there's several services out there that you could check out. The one that I use is called Tidal, where you can get uncompressed hi-fi lossless audio. So when you're using examples like this with students and you want them to hear these really detailed differences in sounds, or you want them to listen for audio details in what they're creating, listening to full hi-fi uncompressed audio is really important. So Tidal is a subscription-based service. You do pay for it, but for my personal listening, it's certainly worth the money. I use Spotify a lot, but as of right now, the date of this recording, Spotify doesn't offer a lossless hi-fi audio format yet. They say they're going to, but they've been saying that for a while now, and it still hasn't happened. There are other options out there. If you use Amazon or a member of Amazon Prime, you can get Amazon audio music that comes in a hi-fi lossless format. And Apple Music is also, I believe, offering some uncompressed audio formats also. So there are different things to check out, but I would definitely recommend that in your classroom, when you are playing audio examples, that you look for lossless audio and that you're playing it over, at least, like I said, a decent set of studio monitors. Your students will hear the difference. So that's the first thing. The second website I want to show you is by Google, and it is artsandculture.google.com. So if you go to this web page, initially what you're going to find on the homepage is lots of visual art stuff, which is great. But if you come over to the search bar, and specifically for these lessons we've been talking about with digital music and electronic and synthesizers, I'm going to search Moog, M-O-O-G. And this is going to pull up some links that I think are just fantastic. So, for example, this is a general overview of electronic music that will, it says a brief history, but there's actually a lot of information here that you can use and share with your students. History of video game music is going to be very relevant for a lot of your students that you might be able to use. So I would definitely check that out. Now, one of the things about this that is so super cool is some of these instruments that we've actually talked about, the Fairlight CMI, the Roland TR-808, they've got these images that you can click on. And in this image, you can, once it loads, you're going to be able to click on the image and rotate it and move it around. So students will be able to look at this from the top, the side, the back, so they can really move the instrument around and get a good idea of what it looks like. Now, the thing that's really so super cool, if you do have access to a VR headset, an Oculus or something like that, you can view these instruments in augmented reality, which is, I think, so super cool. You'd have to download the app either on the App Store or on Google Play. But if you do have access to a VR headset, then that's a really awesome experience for students to be able to see these instruments in augmented reality. Now, the other thing that is with this website also is some specific sites with about Bob Moog, the online exhibit, the pictures, just some really great content. Awesome photographs to see, the history of Moog and how he developed the instruments and things like that. So the artsandculture.google.com is an outstanding resource that I would certainly utilize in your classroom. And again, all these links I will include in the notes for the show. And the last thing I want to show you is a website I found specifically about the Stranger Things soundtrack. And one of the things about this website that is really great is you can actually see a list of tracks by season. And then once you go to the season, it breaks it down by episode. So, for example, I can go to season 1, I can click on episode number 1, and it's going to show me a track list for everything in season 1, episode 1. So you can see all the titles that are Kyle Dixon and Michael Stein. You're going to know those are original compositions for the soundtrack. And then things that come that are not from them will be listed also. So the thing that's great about that is if you come up to episode 1, you can click on the arrow and basically toggle through the different episodes for each season. So that can make sort of researching and trying to find particular tracks from the series here. You can always return back to the seasons and return to go to like season 2, season 3, season 4. They're all broken down the same way. And it also breaks down the releases that they did as soundtracks, Volume 1 and Volume 2, which is not as extensive as the breakdown that I showed you above. But this is also a great resource to use as you're looking to develop these lesson plans and units based on Stranger Things. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is copyright and what's considered fair educational use for copyrighted materials in your classroom. Now, I know as I started this, and it's kind of a joke, I said I'm going to refer to all this as stranger stuff, so I don't have any violations of copyright on any of this stuff. And some of you as teachers, I know I talk to a lot of teachers, and we're concerned about not wanting to infringe on anyone's copyright when we use things in our classroom that are copyrighted. So obviously things like video clips from Stranger stuff, any of these audio recordings are all copyrighted material. And sometimes teachers are very wary to use that in the classroom because you don't want to break copyright, which I totally agree with and you should be aware of. But in most cases, you're going to be okay using these things as examples for your students in your classroom. When it comes to copyright and what's called educational fair use, there's really 4 things that the law considers about whether or not someone is infringing on someone else's copyright by using their material in the classroom. So the first thing they consider is what's called the purpose of the use. And so that's really pretty simple in that why are you using this copyrighted material in your classroom? Are you actually using it for an educational purpose to teach a particular concept or unit? As long as you're using it for an educational purpose, that checks the first box. Now, you can't just go, I'm just sort of done with these last 2 weeks of school, so we're just going to watch Stranger Things and, just listen to the music as you go. No, that's not going to fly. But as long as you're using it for a purpose for teaching, that's one box checked out. The second thing to look at is the nature of the work. Is the material that you're using appropriate for what it is you're going to be teaching? So if you say, oh yes, I'm using this for educational purpose, and then they go, well, okay, so what was the nature of the educational purpose in the work? For example, if you're using the 2 versions of Heroes, you can say that, we're talking about remixing and rearranging, and they're comparing and contrasting, these 2 tracks. Well, it's obvious that the nature of those 2 works is appropriate for that educational use. The third thing, the amount of the work. Again, if you're going to use some scenes from Stranger Things to talk about different aspects of any of these topics we've discussed, Are you showing the entire episode, or you're having them watch the entire season? Or are you just showing a 30-second, a 90-second, even a 2, maybe 3-minute chunk from the series? If that's all you're using is enough to meet the purpose and nature of the work, you're going to be okay. Again, you can't go in there and just mirror your Netflix account on your LCD screen at school and show them entire episodes or seasons of the show, but as long as it's limited, it's okay. And then finally, the effect on the marketplace. And basically that means, are you doing anything that would take away from a potential sale of that material to a consumer? So again, if you're using these things as examples, like you're not pulling like an MP3 version of a song and then sharing that file with your student. If the students wanted to have a copy of the Separate Ways remix, they could, go to iTunes and buy that track, or they could subscribe to Spotify. You can't take the whole track and then just share that with them, because that's something that would have an impact on the marketplace. And same thing, like you can't screen capture or something like an episode of Stranger Stuff and then share that file with students so that the students can have the file and then watch it and share it. Yeah, so that last thing is, effect on the marketplace. But for the most part, what I'm suggesting with doing these things, you're going to be fine using snippets, excerpts from any of this stuff from Stranger Things in your classroom. So don't be so worried about that. I'd really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. If you find these videos useful, please share this with your colleagues. Tell them to check it out. And always, you're welcome to visit the website, www.mutechteachernet.com. Advocate, support, inspire, and create.